In the heart of the bustling city, where the tall skyscrapers reached for the heavens and the aroma of fine dining wafted through the air, there was a restaurant named the Regal Feastery. It was known far and wide for its exquisite cuisine and impeccable service, making it the perfect setting for a lavish dinner. And it was here that Amy Kensington, a woman of extravagant wealth and an inflated sense of self-worth, decided to celebrate her one-year anniversary with Jake, her handsome and kind-hearted boyfriend. Amy was a vision of extravagance herself. Her fiery red hair cascaded down her shoulders, and her emerald green eyes sparkled with entitlement. Her evening gown, adorned with diamonds and pearls, clung to her svelte frame in a way that drew envious glances from the other diners. She carried an air of arrogance that set her apart from the restaurant's more modest patrons. Jake, on the other hand, was the embodiment of charm and humility. His wavy chestnut hair framed a face that exuded warmth and charisma. He had a lean and athletic build, and his blue eyes mirrored the vibrant hope of youth. The two made a striking couple, but they couldn't have been more different in their approach to life. As Amy and Jake were seated at a prime table near the window, the evening sun cast a warm, golden glow over their dinner setting. A crystal chandelier dangled above them, casting a mesmerizing web of light across the room. The elegantly dressed diners conversed in hushed tones, their laughter punctuated by the soft clinking of wine glasses and silverware. Their waiter for the evening was a young man named Daniel. He was a university student working to make ends meet, supporting his family back in the small town he hailed from. Daniel's jet black hair was neatly combed, and his warm brown eyes had a glimmer of determination that belied his modest circumstances. Daniel approached their table with a warm smile, extending the menu for them to peruse. "Good evening, madam, sir," he greeted them with utmost politeness. Amy's delicate fingers brushed the menu lightly, and she barely glanced at it before rolling her eyes. "Honestly, Jake, why do they even bother with menus at places like this?" she scoffed, dismissing it with a haughty wave. "I'll have the lobster bisque, the prime rib, and a bottle of your finest champagne." Jake, ever the considerate one, offered Daniel a warm smile. "I'll have the grilled salmon and a glass of the house white wine." As Daniel noted down their orders, Amy couldn't help but let out a condescending laugh. "Jake, really? House wine? You have no idea how to enjoy the finer things in life. Daniel, make it 2 glasses of the most expensive white wine you have." Daniel nodded politely and jotted down the change in the wine order. As the evening progressed, Amy's arrogance continued to shine. She berated the service staff for the slightest mistakes and demanded constant attention, believing that her wealth entitled her to such treatment. Jake, however, was visibly uncomfortable with her behavior. He couldn't reconcile the woman he loved with the self-absorbed diva sitting across from him. By the time their main courses arrived, the restaurant had fallen under a hushed silence, punctuated only by the soft clinking of silverware. Amy took one bite of her prime rib and immediately scowled. "This is unacceptable," she announced, raising her hand to summon Daniel. Daniel arrived promptly, his polite smile still intact. "Is there a problem, madam?" Amy didn't bother to lower her voice. "This prime rib is overcooked. I can't believe I'm paying this much for such incompetence. Take it back and bring me another one, cooked properly this time." Jake, his patience wearing thin, gently placed a hand on Amy's arm. "Amy, it's not that big of a deal. You could just ask for it to be cooked a bit less. There's no need to make a scene." But Amy was undeterred. "No, Jake, I will not settle for less. I deserve the best, and I won't tolerate mediocrity." With a heavy sigh, Daniel took the plate and left the table, leaving Amy fuming. Jake's gaze never left her, and it was clear he was growing increasingly uncomfortable with her behavior. The night wore on, and Amy's attitude did not improve. She berated the waitstaff over the wine temperature and made snide comments about the attire of other diners. The once joyful anniversary dinner had turned into an evening of humiliation for both Jake and the service staff. As dessert arrived, a beautifully crafted chocolate souffle, Amy's dissatisfaction reached its zenith. She skewered the delicate dessert with her fork, and as she examined it, her face twisted in disgust. "This is a disaster," she declared loudly enough for everyone around to hear. "Jake, how can you let them serve this travesty?" Daniel, who had been serving other tables in an attempt to avoid the fiery woman, rushed to their side, determined to provide the best service he could under the circumstances. "I apologize if there's an issue with your dessert, madam. What seems to be the problem?" Amy glared at Daniel as if he had personally offended her. "Look at it. It's all sunken in, and it's practically inedible. Take it away and bring me a new one. And this time, it better be perfect." Jake, his patience finally at its end, spoke up. Amy, that's enough. You're treating the staff terribly, and you're ruining our evening. Amy turned on Jake with a look of disdain. Oh, Jake, you just don't understand. I have high standards, and I won't accept anything less. If you can't handle that, then maybe you should find someone more suited to your taste. The restaurant had fallen eerily silent as Amy's voice echoed through the room. Diners looked on in disbelief, some with pity in their eyes, and others with a growing sense of disdain. Jake, his face a mix of frustration and disappointment, pushed back his chair and stood up. You know what, Amy? You're right. I don't understand why you need to treat people this way. I thought tonight was supposed to be a celebration, but all you've done is humiliate the staff and embarrass me. I can't be with someone who thinks so little of others. With that, Jake turned and walked away, leaving Amy in stunned silence. The restaurant's patrons, who had been privy to the entire spectacle, erupted into applause. The staff, including Daniel, who had returned with a perfectly executed souffle, joined in the ovation, their smiles genuine and heartfelt. Amy sat at the now empty table, her emerald eyes filled with tears of shock and regret. The applause had died down, but the stares of judgment from those around her remained. She realized that she had gone too far, and her smug attitude had cost her the one person who had cared for her despite her flaws. In the days that followed, Amy retreated to her opulent apartment, drowning in a sea of loneliness and self-pity. She had lost Jake, the one man who had seen the good in her despite her arrogant behavior. Her once luxurious surroundings now felt cold and empty, reflecting the hollowness that had taken root in her heart. Her thoughts often drifted back to that fateful night at Le Château d'Epicure. She replayed the scene in her mind, remembering the humiliation she had caused to the staff and the disappointment in Jake's eyes. The incident had left an indelible mark on her, one that couldn't be erased by the veneer of wealth and privilege she had so carefully constructed around herself. As Amy grappled with her own actions, she couldn't help but think of Daniel, the waiter who had been at the receiving end of her entitled behavior. She felt a growing sense of guilt, knowing that she had treated him and the other restaurant staff unfairly. It was a reflection of the worst parts of herself, and she couldn't escape the reality that she had much to learn about empathy and humility. One evening, Amy decided to take a step toward mending her broken soul. She called the restaurant and asked to speak with Daniel, explaining that she wished to apologize in person for her reprehensible behavior. A few days later, she found herself back at Le Château d'Epicure, a place that had once symbolized indulgence and extravagance but now carried the weight of her past actions. The moment she walked through the doors, she was met with a familiar hush. The staff recognized her instantly, but this time it was not with the same sense of disdain. They had heard about her desire to make amends, and they understood the difficulty of taking such a step. Amy spotted Daniel, who was tending to a table near the entrance. His face lit up with surprise when he saw her, and he excused himself from the diners to approach her. Daniel, I owe you an apology, Amy began, her voice filled with sincerity. I acted terribly that night, and I deeply regret my behavior. I hurt not only you but also my own boyfriend, who deserved much better. I want to make amends, if you'll allow me. Daniel regarded her with a measured expression, a mix of wariness and forgiveness. Apologies are a good start, but actions speak louder than words. Amy, it's not just about making amends with me, but about changing how you treat people going forward. Amy nodded in understanding. You're right. I've realized I need to change, not just for others, but for myself as well. I'm seeking therapy to work on my character flaws, and I promise to be more considerate and kind in the future. With a small smile, Daniel accepted her apology. I appreciate your sincerity, Amy. Everyone can change, but it takes effort and self-reflection. I hope you succeed in becoming a better person. As Amy left the restaurant that day, a newfound sense of determination washed over her. She understood that her journey towards self-improvement would be long and challenging, but it was a path she was determined to follow. Amy's journey of self-improvement continued as she took one small step after another. Months passed, and she made genuine efforts to change her behavior, seeking therapy and reaching out to those she had wronged in the past. Her transformation was gradual but sincere, and the lessons she had learned about humility and empathy began to shape her into a better person. One day, as Amy sat alone in her now sparsely decorated apartment, her phone rang. It was Jake. They had not spoken since that fateful night at the restaurant, and she felt a mix of anxiety and hope as she answered the call. Hello, Jake, she said, her voice trembling. There was a brief pause on the other end, and then Jake's voice came through, warm and filled with forgiveness. Amy, I've been following your progress, and I can see that you're truly making an effort to change. I wanted to let you know that I appreciate that, and I forgive you." Tears welled up in Amy's eyes as she replied, "Thank you, Jake. I'm so grateful for your forgiveness, and I'm not the same person I was back then. I've learned a lot about humility and empathy, and I'm determined to be a better person." Jake's response was filled with hope. "I'm glad to hear that, Amy. Maybe, with time, we can try again. But for now, let's take it one step at a time." Amy understood the wisdom of his words, and she felt a renewed sense of and that was Jake. She had not seen him since their last phone call, and she felt that she needed to see him in person to truly make things right. With a heart filled with hope, she decided to visit Jake's apartment, a place where they had shared many memories. She wanted to reconcile, to let him know how much she had changed, and to seek forgiveness for her past behavior. As she stood at the crosswalk, her gaze locked onto Jake's building on the other side of the street. Her heart raced with anticipation, and she didn't notice the traffic light changing. Without a second thought, she began to sprint across the street, her sole focus on the reconciliation she so desperately sought. But fate can be a cruel and unpredictable force. Just as Amy reached the middle of the street, a city bus came hurtling around the corner. Its brakes screeched, but it was too late. The bus struck Amy with devastating force, sending her tumbling to the ground. Jake, who had been standing by his window, saw the horrifying accident unfold before his eyes. He rushed down to the street, his heart pounding with fear and dread. Passers-by had gathered around the motionless Amy, and the ambulance was called. As Amy lay on the cold pavement, gasping for breath, she felt a profound sense of regret wash over her. In those moments, as her life hung in the balance, she knew that she had come so far on her journey of self-improvement, but it had been cut short by a tragic accident. With the ambulance sirens wailing in the distance, Amy's vision began to blur, and her thoughts turned to the person she had been on the path to becoming. She had transformed into a kinder, more empathetic soul, and in her final moments, she knew that she would be remembered more fondly than if she had died as the arrogant version of herself. Amy's tragic accident sent shockwaves through the community, and news of her death spread quickly. Her transformation from an arrogant and smug individual to a kinder, more compassionate person was well known to those who had come to know her in the last months of her life. At Amy's funeral, the chapel was filled with people who had witnessed her remarkable change. Many had stories of how she had reached out to them, seeking forgiveness and striving to make amends. The eulogy celebrated not only the life she had lived, but the person she had become in her final days. Jake, who had been deeply moved by Amy's transformation and her tragic end, stood at the pulpit to speak. His voice trembled as he recounted the story of their journey, from their ill-fated dinner at the Regal Feastery to the final moments he had witnessed from his apartment window. He spoke of Amy's determination to change, her pursuit of humility, and her genuine efforts to become a better person. He told the assembled mourners about the last phone call they had shared, where he had forgiven her, and the hope they had shared for a better future. As he concluded his eulogy, Jake's words carried a powerful message. Amy's journey is a reminder that it's never too late to change, to become a better person. She taught us that humility and empathy can transform even the most stubborn hearts. She may have left us too soon, but the legacy she leaves behind is one of redemption and self-discovery. Amy Kensington was remembered not as the smug and arrogant woman she once was, but as a person who had learned the value of humility and kindness, even if it had come tragically late in her life. Her story served as a poignant reminder that change was possible and that it was never too late to become a better version of oneself. In the end, Amy's legacy was one of transformation, a testament to the power of self-improvement and the enduring impact of a kind heart. Her memory lived on not as a symbol of arrogance, but as a symbol of hope, inspiring others to embrace change and strive for a better, more compassionate world.